Tri-State Classic happened this past weekend, and the top seeds from the MSAHA dominated, sweeping the competition. Hattiesburg also bounces back from their Muddy River loss with a win over Jackson and a blowout win over Meridian last night. We'll talk about that a little bit. We also have a big rematch between Muddy River and PCA on Saturday as PCA tries to close what they were not able to get done last time at home. We also have Meridian girls coach Scott Sherman joining us as well as the athletic director for the PCA Paladins, Andy Boggs, joining us as well. We've got a great show for you tonight. The MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show begins right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Be sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button right now. We are almost at 900 subscribers on the TSJW Network YouTube channel, so we would definitely appreciate if you just went ahead and hit the subscribe button right now. Also, check out the website, tsjwnetwork.net. That's where all the articles and all that kind of stuff is, as well as the score standings and schedules throughout the MSAHA conference. Go ahead and check out the website. Also, follow us on Instagram at TSJW Network. Go ahead and do that as well. So this past week, we had some games, a few games. We also had the Tri-State Classic. We're going to talk about some of these conference games from this last week. And so what we had is in some 16U boys action. We on December 1st, the Jackson Victors defeating the Hattiesburg Forerunners by a score of 35-32. That was a pretty a surprising win for Jackson. They lost the first time these two teams took each other on in 16U boys. Jackson able to defeat Hattiesburg on the road on that one. That was a big one. That actually catapults them up to the second seed at the moment in the 16U boys field for the Jackson Victors. They've got a good young crew, and they were able to show that with that win over Hattiesburg on Friday, a big win for them. In 18U boys action between those two teams, Hattiesburg won that ball game 49-28. So they complete the season sweep over the Jackson Victors with that 21-point win. Some more Hattiesburg action on December 5th. This was last night. Hattiesburg and Meridian, 16U boys. Hattiesburg taking the win handedly, 49-33. 18U girls, they had a barn burner. We're talking to Scott Sherman, Coach Scott Sherman later on. 25-24 win for Hattiesburg. Hattiesburg remains undefeated in conference, but they almost lose to Meridian there on the road there at Hickory. So that kind of shows we've got some interesting days ahead for this 18U girls field, and we'll talk to Coach Sherman about that game a little bit later on. 18U boys, Hattiesburg able to really handle Meridian 71-27. So the highest score for the season for Hattiesburg, and they're able to get a win by a large margin there to bring them to 4-1 in a conference play. Let's look at those 18U boys standings here. As you see, Muddy River on top, 9-4 overall record. And so that came for them, that came from that Tri-State Classic. They played 4 games, winning all 4 of the ball games, including beating the Chef Patriots, who the Patriots were undefeated going into that game. And the Muddy River Counselors were able to defeat them 77-69, a very good battle. That game's actually still up on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Hattiesburg right there at number 2, 4-1 in conference, with their lone loss being to the number 1 seed Muddy River Counselors. PCA has not played a conference game in a good while. Their 2 wins are against Laurel and Meridian. Their 1 loss to Muddy River. They will take on Muddy River, of course, on Saturday. We'll talk about that later on as well. PCA's kind of had a little bit of a break from games lately, and they get back on it tomorrow, actually taking on Chef tomorrow. And we'll talk to Mr. Andy Boggs later on. He is the athletic director for the PCA Paladins. Laurel and Jackson and Meridian coming up behind. Let's look at this 18U girls standings, though, which this is starting to get a little bit more interesting, where you have Laurel up top, of course. Laurel way up top. I think, this might be, I might have thrown up an old graphic here. Laurel actually at the moment, 14-2, if you just go ahead and take that one down. So, Laurel 14-2 overall. They won all their games, and then they beat Lamar Christian last night. So the Laurel Lady Hawks doing pretty well. Hattiesburg now 4-0 in conference, and so they're looking pretty good too. They're set up for a nice clash there, but Laurel, they probably would have the upper hand just because of the size and the experience of their team. And so now let's look at the next week's games here coming up in the MSAHA this week. We've got some on. So this is tomorrow night. We got Meridian and Muddy River coming from Hines B. Hall, Raymond, Mississippi. All these games will be live on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. So December 7th, Meridian and Muddy River, 14U boys, the counselors, undefeated in 14U, the defending back-to-back champions in the 14U field. They were able to defeat Meridian by 10 points last time, so that should be a good one there tomorrow. 16U, the counselors doing pretty well as well. Meridian's been able to have some battles, though. And so now you got 18U girls action. You have the two bottom seeds of the conference, but Meridian obviously showing that they can compete with some of the higher seeds in the conference with a 1-point loss to Hattiesburg. They take on the Muddy River counselors and Raymond tomorrow night. The counselors have yet to win a ball game. 18U boys, the counselors, the number 1 seed, taking on Meridian, the bottom seed. And then we've got on December 9th, Tupelo and Laurel in 14U boys and 16U boys. That'll be interesting. Of course, Tupelo not competing in the 16U boys conference, but they are competing in a non-conference ball game there. Then you got the PCA and Muddy River games that we'll talk about a little later on in our show. This is the second part of these games. So December 11th, you got Hattiesburg and Muddy River. So you feel like those two teams just took each other on. Well, they're playing again, and that will be 16U, 18U boys, and that will be hosted by the counselors, and Hattiesburg going to try to get another shot. The counselors after losing by 30 the first time. And so that will be interesting. December 12th, it will be Jackson and Muddy River. The counselors have a big homestand coming up. They have not played a home game for their 18U boys team yet this season. Tomorrow will be the first one. And we've got that, and as well as that is wrong. But anyway, you can take that one down too. But so we got that'll be some interesting stuff that we've got coming up next week. But big on our broadcast, so we got the game of the week. The MSHA game of the week is PCA and Muddy River. Of course, that will be live from Hines B. Hall, streaming Lord willing on Counselors TV. On the TSJW Network YouTube channel. That will be December 9th. The 18U boys ball game, which is the game of the week, starts at 3:30. PCA definitely looking to get that win. They only lost by 5 points last time at home. The counselors have been playing well as of late. PCA has been playing well as of late as well. So that will be interesting to see. So now I want to bring on our contributor, Charlie Cotton. Bring him on to the stream. And what's up, Charlie? So you wrote a column this week. Your column of the week was about this PCA and Muddy River game coming up, just previewing that ball game. So Charlie, like, Muddy River's rolling right now. They swept the Tri-State Classic, including beating an undefeated Shift Patriots team. And these two teams faced off in Lacombe on November 4th. Muddy River able to get that win 47-42 in narrow fashion. Do you think PCA can get done what they just weren't able to close out last time at home?
Yeah, I 100% think PCA can come back and get. So, yeah, we're talking about a 5-point game, at PCA's court. We're not talking about a 50-point game. If that was happening, I would be a little bit more like, okay, Muddy River, definitely better PCA. We're talking about a 3-pointer and a layup. So, Muddy River, they're doing super good, right? Did super good in the Tri-State Classic. PCA also doing well in tournaments. They went down, I think, to West Florida, and they got that win in that tournament over there. So, I mean, PCA is doing good. Muddy River is doing good. The they just play in two different ways. And I wrote about this in my article. It's just going to be like a really entertaining game to watch because PCA is going to have to play to their strengths, use their size against this smaller Muddy River team. And Muddy River is going to play to their strengths, shooting a three and use their athleticism. It's just going to be a really good matchup to see against these two different play styles. So yeah, both of these teams are good. And we saw that, it's a 5-point game like we're talking about. So yes, I 100% think PCA can come back and try to do what they did last time. They weren't able to do it last time, but I 100% think that they can get this win this time against Muddy River if they rally together and play well as a team.
Yeah, and so PCA has been the number 1 seed the last last 3 seasons. This
Yep.
would be their 4th season in a row if they were able to pull it off this year. This is basically a must-win game if they want to do that again this season.
Right.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about, you were able to you played against Jackson on Friday. Jackson able to get the win 35-32. And so, I mean, this is a sneaky good team. They're 3-1 in conference now at the number 2 spot. How much what chance do you give this Jackson team in making some noise in this 16U boys field?
So yeah, we talked about this last time. I mean, Jackson is a good team. They're not a bad team. And we see this in Jackson. We talked about this in the last show. Jackson's really playing for that long game. They're playing for the long game. They have a lot of JV guys, but they're also playing varsity. And so, yes, they're really playing for that long game, but we're already starting to see it right now. They're getting this big, important varsity experiences against these older guys. And being older in basketball and sports in general is just it's a cheat code. You grow into your body and all this athleticism and all that. I mean, they're playing
Absolutely.
against this tougher competition. But then they come back to 16U, and that's a different level of play, and they've been used to playing at varsity. So of course we should see some benefit from that, and we're already seeing that. They're a good team. Obviously, I think we should have won that game. We should have played better as a team ourselves. But Jackson really came in there. They wanted that win, and they deserved that win. They wanted it more than us that game, and I will admit that. They're a good team, and people should take them seriously, especially in the 16U game. Varsity, yeah, they might not be there yet. That's a long game. In a couple years, I definitely think they'll be competing in varsity again. But right now in 16U, we're already starting to see some benefits from them really playing in that varsity level and then coming back to 16U and really feeling strong and comfortable in that scenario.
Definitely. And so now, Charlie, turning the attention to Hattiesburg after that game, you guys in the 16U, you've taken 2 straight losses there. How do you think that you guys are going to bounce back from that?
Yeah, I mean, we're really starting to dial in. After taking those 2 losses, it's really like a wake-up call because I feel like we got comfortable after, just beginning the season. We were doing really well, and we can't get comfortable. We're not wanting to take these losses anymore. It's time to wake up and actually start playing basketball. And we saw that last night with Meridian. We really stepped it up, and we were really happy with that performance last night at Meridian. And we're really motivated for this season. We really want to do better than what we have done these past few games, and I really do think we're going to bounce back from that 100%.
For sure. Thank you, Charlie, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Folks, I do want to remind you once again to be sure to hit that subscribe button to the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Our next guest right here on the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show is Coach Scott Sherman of the Meridian Flyers girls basketball team. We definitely welcome Coach Sherman on the show with us. Coach, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Trellis. Thanks for having me. And before you ask any questions, I want to just second what Charlie said. I watched the game last night, and that's some of the best ball I've seen them play in a long time.
Absolutely. And so I just so my first question there that I wanted to ask is so last season you lost some players from last season's squad, most notably one of the top players in the conference, your daughter Emily Sherman. She graduated off from last year's team. So how much do you look at this season as a developmental year?
So for us this year, I've got no seniors, so I'm not graduating anybody. If you look at the end of last season, we lost Emily, we lost Lydia. And in the all-conference team, we had 4 players selected, which I really think partially was because nobody knew who number 3 was. This year, we're struggling. And I think what that speaks to is how much our team relied on Emily and Lydia, but for leadership. The team is struggling to know and understand who its leader is. They're having to figure that out, having learned how to communicate without Emily being there. She was the kind of the linchpin, if you will, of communication and kind of settled the floor. And we are learning how to do that. A couple games ago, we had our best game just in terms of communication, and the team really settled in. I think we're developing into a team with two different leaders, one on offense and defense. But this season for me is all about development, even to the point of maybe sacrificing a win here or there. I've got to grow the players. I've got to grow the team in order for us to be competitive next year.
So you guys have had your struggles this season, but you've also had some close battles, including last night against Hattiesburg. And Hattiesburg, undefeated team in the conference. You lose to them by 1 point. And so really my question is just how do you feel your team's battled this season in the development year?
I think we're getting better every time we play. We've actually had two really close games. In fact, we came from behind, beating Russell Christian late last week, and beat them by 1 point with 12 seconds left in the game. And then coming up last night, had opportunity with 2.5 seconds left to look for that lucky shot, and didn't go our way. But the girls are playing really well, and I'm super proud of them because it's not just the top 5 players. So like last night, we played the first half primarily my top 5 or 6 players, and then in the second half, I rotated everybody in, including JV players. You're really looking to get them working together and develop those younger players, so that part of the issue of development isn't just developing your top 5 into being a better top 5, is developing your next 5, be able to support them. And I think Hattiesburg knew we were doing that and did a little bit of the same thing, but we pulled it back close, and the game ended a 1 point game. I think they're learning and growing each day, and I'm proud of them.
So you go up against Muddy River on the road. This is y'all's only conference win thus far, a 29-15 win. They're at home. That was their opening night, and it was y'all's first conference win. So just preview that matchup for us. So
last season, kind of same situation, right? We Muddy River came to Meridian and won. We won. And I think we went to Muddy River expecting an easy victory, and it was anything but easy. So my preview of the game tomorrow is I'm not going to overestimate ourselves or underestimate Muddy River. I think your girls will have grown a lot since we saw them, and I expect it to be a battle. We're going to come and play our game. We are working some new defensive packages, and so we're going to play those defensive packages, and we expect you to stress us. And so I think this should be a good game, a fun one to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And so what would you say is the overarching goal for this season?
Number one, communication. The team needs to understand who's leading, who to listen to, and figure out who settles them on offense, who settles them on defense. And I think they figured it out now. It's just a matter of kind of keying on that. Number two, the players I need to develop court vision. And right now I really only have 2 girls that I can draw on a board and say, this is what I expect of you, and have confidence they understand exactly what I said, and that they're not going to misunderstand the X's and the O's and the arrows, and be able to apply a 2-dimensional graphic to a 3-dimensional reality. And so we need to grow in our understanding of space and basketball, and grow in our ability. We set plays up as coaches. We set up rules, but those rules are really built to create opportunity to break them successfully. And we need to develop in knowing how to do that, not as individuals, but as a team. And when we can do that, we will grow by leaps and bounds.
So you took on Hattiesburg the first time on the road, lost 33-18. Mm-hmm. Last night, you lose by 1 point. So just to explain the difference there and just what you saw from last night. And I wasn't able to see the game, so I just saw the score. So just fill us in on that.
Sure. So I think one key difference when we went to Hattiesburg, we were struggling to play well in the first half. We were going out with jitters and some key players just it wasn't the third quarter until they actually started playing like they were capable of playing. The last 2 or 3 games, whether it's on the road or at home, really have challenged them, and they've stepped up. So we played a complete game. We played 4 quarters of basketball, came out the gate, started strong, number one. Number two, we learned a new defense yesterday. One of our big struggles without Emily is not having that big dominant center player that can really take out any one dominant center or post player.
Yeah.
And so we tried a new defense last night. We learned it on the whiteboard right before the game. And in the first quarter, Catherine scored 3 buckets on us pretty quick as we made mistakes. But over the rest of the game, we limited her to 1 basket each quarter. And I think as we learn this defense, I am not overly optimistic, but we'll see how we do when we come back up against Laurel and Mariah and see how well this defense really works as we learn it.
Yeah, and that was definitely something from last year with Emily playing because you guys were the one team in the conference. Of course, PCA was able to win the championship, after a few of Laurel's injuries that they ended up having. But before that, you guys were the ones that were keeping Laurel the closest just because of that interior defense and the rebounding for sure. But Coach, we appreciate you joining us, and I'm going to see you tomorrow.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Coach.
Yes, sir.
And so, folks, next up, we'll have Mr. Andy Boggs, Athletic Director of the PCA Paladins, joining us. But first, I do want to remind you that we have our trivia segment coming up at the end. And I do want you to go ahead and make the guess in the comments. The question for this week that I'm going to answer after our interview with him is who holds the single game point scoring record in an MSAHA game. That means against an MSAHA opponent. We'll tell you that answer a little later on and bring up a new trivia question right here on the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show. And so now I'm going to bring on Andy Boggs. He's Athletic Director for the PCA Paladins. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Trellis.
He got you a headset and everything. It's sounding good over there.
Awesome.
So first question. So you haven't had games in a little while. You guys have kind of had the break ever since the Thanksgiving break. You haven't played like a whole lot of games since then. You got the Chef Patriots tomorrow. That's a tough competitor. You got the Muddy River Counselors, which is a big conference game on Saturday. Chef was undefeated going into the Tri-State Classic. Now they only have 1 loss. They lost to the Muddy River Counselors. Very narrow score, though. Very good game. How ready are these guys to hit the court again?
Oh, it's a good question. And I would say that while we haven't had a game in quite a while, we did come off of a tournament down in West Florida. Charlie Cotton spoke to that. And his analysis was spot on with regards to, I know that later on we're going to talk about the matchup between Muddy River and PCA. But, we played some great games at the West Florida Conference tournament. Both our varsity girls and varsity boys ended up winning it, doing a repeat from last year, swept the tournament. Very competitive matchups. So we played some fairly competitive teams, and that certainly helped get us ready for the future for our games tomorrow against Chef and obviously this weekend against Muddy River. Also, we did play Oak Forest. Oak Forest is a private school. They are very good. They ended up winning in both the varsity girls and varsity boys handily. Very disciplined team, very well-rounded team ball. So that was good to play that competitive level in order to prepare us for the games this week. And I know with the West Florida Conference Championship, there was an article written about that Great young man wrote about that from our team. Very excellent article. If you haven't had a chance to read that, it's on your website. Check that out.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely go ahead and check those out too. The Paladin Beat is included on the TSJW Network. .net. The Muddy River game on Saturday, big game, huge in terms of seeding. And just like I said earlier, you guys have been the number one seed in the 18U boys tournament the last 3 seasons. Of course, the first time y'all won the championship was last season, but the 2 years before, number one seed. And now this is basically a must win in order to get that number one seed again this year. Of course, you'd rather have the championship than the number one seed, of course. But now you guys are really the only team that really has much of a shot in catching them in the seeding, just because of the point differential component. It was only a 5-point game last time, so if you guys were to beat them, you could beat them by more than 5 in a scenario that is in the realm of possibility for sure. So just preview that game for us this weekend. That's going to be a road game.
Yeah, absolutely. You talking about the Muddy River game?
That's right.
Well, obviously, whenever y'all came to us, the JV boys, that was a very tough game. Obviously, the biggest thing right there, just looking over some of the stats from that game with our JV boys and Muddy River, y'all, the biggest thing right there was offensive rebounds. Y'all had 23, we had 5. Field goal attempts, we had 35, y'all had 61. So almost for every one shot we had, y'all had 2. You just can't win games if you're not getting enough shots off. And then obviously turnovers was a big problem. We had 22 to 11, so we doubled in that. So if we can obviously tighten up turnovers, hopefully not allow y'all to get as many offensive rebounds, y'all can jump like crazy and grab those balls right out of the air. So hopefully that'll give us a little bit more opportunities, a few less for Muddy River, but y'all are very well athletic team. So that'll be something that we got to look into to narrow that margin for a possible victory for the next time we see y'all. For the varsity girls, almost the exact opposite. Our girls did very well, but really there was only 2 quarters where we had scored more points than Muddy River. And that was the deciding factor at that point. We just maintained the lead. So that should be a good matchup as well. We did have 79 shot attempts to 49. So again, field goal attempts, you put it up enough, eventually some of them are going to fall. So we hope to keep putting them up there and hopefully have more points. Now the varsity boys, looking at the stats on this one was very well evenly matched. And as was mentioned earlier, the differential was 5 points. And just looking at the stats from that one, kind of have a little depiction on here. I don't know if you can kind of see this, but it's not going to show up. Anyway, we were behind. We got the lead early in the first quarter. Y'all took the lead. We got it again briefly, and then right towards the very end, it was tied. And then the last 2 possessions, we just didn't get a great shot off, and y'all capitalized, got the ball back twice, I think scored a layup and maybe a 3-pointer, and ended up winning the game by 5 points. So that was a great, exciting game. Y'all came out shooting right away in the first quarter, 19 points to our 7. And then in the second and third quarter, we battled back, and we actually had 1-point lead going into the fourth. So very exciting game. I hope for another exciting matchup this weekend.
That should definitely be interesting. That game that's the MSAHA game of the week, and that'll be live on Counselors TV on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe, turn your notifications on to get that game. It will start at 3:30 p.m. Now, some have been surprised at how good this PCA team has been, but every time people tell me how surprised they are, I do remind them that, your son, Tate Boggs, he missed the majority of last season with injury, and now he's back. And so it's basically like having an addition to your team, and that's at the point guard position. And he got a lot of these young guys who they're champions. They won the championship last year in the 16U tournament and things like that. These guys can play, and they're just stepping up to their age level. Of course, you lost a lot of guys, so of course you've taken some lumps that maybe you didn't have last year but you still have a very, very solid team. Just speak to the way that this team has bounced back from losing the guys that they lost last year.
Yeah, absolutely. We had really 5 seniors that graduated last year. Drew Boggs, my other son, being one of them. He shot very well for the team. He was actually according to Max Prep, he was the #1 3-point shooter in the state of Louisiana as far as 3-pointers made, and #8 in the nation. Decided not to follow it up in college. Instead, just focus on studies. But very proud of him and his shooting. Obviously, Titus and Collier, they're doing very well. Collier's playing now for Delgado, got a full scholarship there, and Hank Peace is at LSU. There's a lot that we lost last year. This year, I would say the thing that caused us to bounce back is the chemistry. I think about Caden Commenge, Tim Singletary, and Tate. Those 3 guys right there have been playing with each other since 2016. They have a lot of chemistry. They've been, sitting on the bench, watching a lot of others play ahead of them. Each time they get an opportunity to play, they've just been a huge encouragement to one another. They have that chemistry, and that's definitely helped them bounce back. We've had a lot of injuries. Tate, obviously, you mentioned him. His ACL and meniscus. And we had Marcel, Holly, Lane Cameron, and Caden with his foot and shoulder. So we've had plagued with injuries last year, along with a whole bunch of other teams. I know Hattiesburg, Laurel, of course, Sean Spradley. I know they were the #1 seed last year going into the tournament. Late injuries plagued them, which, looking at the 2 previous games, they beat us by 19 and 10. And then in the championship conference tournament, we ended up winning by 15. So that's a 25-point difference due to injuries. So injuries can definitely plague any team and cause a huge point differential. So we've been bouncing back as an organization at PCA just from the chemistry on the team. So we're trying to hopefully build upon that and execute. Very thankful for Coach Brian and Eric Singletary as the coaches. And I'm just blown away by how they come up with a great formula for execution. When we went to regionals, we had a lot of lessons learned there. We did not do well, but when we went to nationals, wow, it was an exciting ride. Every game we played, I thought, oh, it's been nice, but we play these teams that looked phenomenal, and we would somehow just come out with a great win with just some hard team effort, chemistry. Coach Brian and Coach Eric put together a phenomenal plan for each game, and we ended up winning all the way through to the championship game and lost in triple overtime at the championship game. So that was exciting. So this year, bouncing off of that, we're trying to just get the chemistry together. We have a great group of guys, and only 3 seniors, Tim Singletary, Caden Commenge, and Lane Cameron for the girls. So we're just hoping to build on that for this year and next year.
Yeah, and so obviously some tough circumstances hit the PCA Paladins organization with Coach Pat King from last year. He was the girls coach last year. He was a guest on this show right before the tournament, and he's champion in his only lone season as head coach at PCA. He passed away this past summer, and I know that was just it's tough obviously for his family, but also tough for everybody in the PCA organization. Everybody seemed to really love him. I mean, and not obviously after, but during, I thought everybody seemed to just really love him as coach and things like that. So just speak to his impact on these young people, because I know that he was a very good Christian influence for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever we do play a lot of teams, you'll notice right away that our shooter shirts all have the number 5 on them, and on the shoulder it has PK with a crown on it for Pat King, and he was number 5 in his high school career. So we wear that to honor him. And he certainly had a huge impact on the PCA or as an organization, not just the girls, but also the young men. He would lead in devotionals in hotel lobbies. Was very outspoken about the gospel. I'll share it, and I know I've told you this before as well. Even at his own funeral, he preached his own funeral. There was a recording of him sharing the gospel, and that was played at his funeral. So I thought that was very awesome. And that's what he wanted his life to be known as, and that was to just make sure others knew their relationship with Christ and wanted to pursue excellence in all that they did, and just wanted to constantly not make himself known for a name, but to make the name of Jesus known.
For sure. So, and my follow-up question to that is, how do you feel that these girls on this team, which a lot of them played for them last year, how do you think that they've done, just competing in these circumstances and in this tough year?
Yeah, absolutely. They've been resilient, done a very good job, and that's the best way to honor him. And that's just to play their hearts out. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whether you eat or drink or whatsoever you do all to the glory of God. And, Coach Pat wouldn't want them to have a pity party over, the fact that he's no longer here. His last breath here, he took his first breath with Christ in heaven. So, we rejoice in the fact that he's no longer suffering. And these girls have just, it's been very emotional with each game, and even in the wins, when we won in West Florida, it was a very emotional win because Coach Pat was the coach last year, and they won it for the first time down there last year, and then they won it again. So it's been emotional, but it just speaks to their resilience in their play, and that's the best way to honor him.
Absolutely, Coach, or Mr. Andy, rather. Thank you for joining us, for sure. And we'll see you on Saturday. Actually, I did have one more question. So you guys take on Chef tomorrow, and that's always been a pretty good battle against the Chef Patriots, and they're the homeschool team based in Baton Rouge. For everybody who does not know who that is, they took on the Muddy River Counselors this past weekend. The Counselors won that ball game 77-69. The game is still up on the YouTube channel. Just kind of preview that game because they, I believe, are 10-1 at this moment.
Well, we know each time we play them, they are a very good team.
Yeah.
And we know it's going to be a battle. We're excited to play them. We know it's very good competition, so it's probably going to be good that we do actually face them tomorrow prior to playing you guys this coming Saturday. I just wanted to thank you, Trellis, and really your whole family, Willis and Angela. I know we've had dinner with y'all. Let's just looking back on my phone. It gave me a year in review, and it showed me a picture of whenever we went out to eat at an Italian restaurant, I think up in Jackson about a year ago. And I was just, it's great to, fellowship. And, that's really what all these, what it's all about whenever we're traveling.
Definitely.
It's the fellowship and the bonding you have with your teammates, the different, parents getting together. And it's also nice, not just with our own group, but, with others. And I know that, Willis and Angela, they've done a great job with establishing Muddy River. Appreciate what you're doing. And also, I think your audience needs to know that, in seeing y'all interact with each other, it's just a testimony that y'all really love each other and care for one another. And I greatly appreciate it. Not a lot of families can say that, but, each time I hear, and I get tired of hearing it, bombs away, baby, that's you just encouraging, son Michael or King or whoever, to continue to do what they're doing. And that's awesome. And, that's what it's all about. We want to encourage one another. Appreciate what you do. I hope not to hear that too much when we play you on Saturday. But anyway, we'll see how things go.
Absolutely. I appreciate you saying that for sure. But I definitely hope to be saying Bombs Away Baby a good bit on a Saturday, I got to say. Thank you. Thank you for joining us for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep, for sure. And folks, we've got the trivia segment coming right up here. I do want to remind you one last time. Can't remind you enough. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button to the TSJW Network YouTube channel. We're almost at 900, so if you could go ahead and do that right now, if you haven't already, that would be great. And so now, last week's trivia section, the question was, who holds the single game point scoring record in an MSAHA game? The answer is actually Dima Mixon. 46 points he scored in a game in his senior year. It's actually senior night for him against Scott County in 2021. Had 46 points in the win. So we're going to have to bring Dima back on the show. We brought him on the show last year. We're going to have to bring him back on the show this year to discuss his 46-point game. I'm sure he'll join on to talk about that. Maybe not some other things, but he'll talk about that for sure. So this week's trivia section, the question is, who is the only family to have 3 members of the family win Conference Player of the Year in the MSAHA? That's a good question right there. You have 3 of your kids win Conference Player of the Year in the MSAHA. There's only one family to have done that. So be sure to comment below the answer to that question. But until next week, folks, thank you for joining us. I appreciate Michael Williams. He's back here. He's doing the graphics and running the background here for the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to the TSJW Network YouTube channel. We've got games coming up tomorrow night. The Meridian Flyers, the Muddy River Counselors will be live with that game on Counselors TV. On Saturday, the MSAHA Game of the Week, the Muddy River Counselors hosting the PCA Paladins. That'll be on Counselors TV as well on the TSJW Network YouTube channel. You can go ahead and turn those notifications on and subscribe to the YouTube channel to view those. Also, remember to check out King Williams Photography. He'll take some pictures around. Got some good pictures at the Tri-State Classic. He's got a website there on SmugMug. So if you go on the SmugMug and look up King Williams Photography, you can find a lot of those pictures. If you're at the Tri-State Classic, you'll probably want to check out a few of those. And thank you for joining us. I'm Trellis Williams. This is the MSAHA Basketball Weekly Show. We out.